afternoon and welcome to our monthly Biz Smart series. We bring you value-adding conversations every month. Now, this year we have been running with the customer experience theme of driving CX agility, and we have anchored our decisions thinking around it. As always, every month we meet to partake this lunch of knowledge. Last month, we spoke about the money mindset for entrepreneurs. We spoke about mastering your relationship with money. What a great session it was. It was awesome. The learnings were great. Now, today we are privileged to have with us a top dollar consultant feeding us this lunch hour. So please get your napkins ready because we shall indulge in an insightful conversation about brand and CX transformation. We shall come out of here with such actionable insights. Now, apart from the learnings, this exceptional webinar presents a unique opportunity to engage with industry experts and influence the direction of your brand. And while you're at it, please tell me, because we are running with the theme of agility. We are driving CX agility. What do you understand about CX agility? What is it? What does it mean to you? What is brand agility? What does it say to you when you think or when you hear agility? Maureen, thank you very much. We see you. Thank you. I am seeing this is Claire. Swiftness, being swift. Okay, all right, that's being swift, correct. You need to be swift in your decision making. You need to be quick in how you react. Being quick on your feet, Shiro. Yes, on your feet, you're agile. Very, very quick on your feet. And wepesi, hey, wepesi, kuwa mwepesi. And then it is Anastasia presenting for wepesi. We tutakuwa wepesi. We must be quick on our feet. We must be agile. Somebody else is saying, chap, chap. I am loving what is coming through. Chap, chap. Haraka, haraka, being fast. Thank you very much. So now let me tell you about our presenter today. Architect Tom Sitati is an architect and a brand strategist. What a lovely combination. He's MAAK and MCIM certified with honors from the University of Nairobi. He is certified and registered with Borak, Kenya, UK chartered marketer with a master's from the University of Leicester, UK, my people. Now he blends these two professionals by asking why. He has worked with various clients across Africa and considers himself a polymath. Google is your friend. Having successfully hopped across various disciplines in writing, strategy, training, coaching. And Tom, I know you're passionate about cycling and you have cycled thousands of kilometers. We will be so happy to hear a thing or two as we go along. Tom Sitati, karibu sana.
Okay. Asante sana. I can see, Anastasia, you have an alternative career in radio. So Springboard, watch out. Thank you so much. This should take this part of the session, which is more or less me just sharing my thoughts, my insights. Nothing I say is gospel truth. There'll be enough time to debate, debunk, and come up with new insights beyond what I'll share here. So I was asked to speak about the nexus of brand and customer experience. And so what I'll try and do is see how to bring those two together. And to start with, I think the word customer, you shall hear it so many times. If there's somebody with a counter, maybe you can count how many times shall say customer. But then the truth is the purpose of a business, the purpose of any organization, and I would even include the non-profit organizations, is to create a customer. When I look at this quote again, I just wanted to underline create a customer. And it took me, not that I was there, but it took me back to what we read about the colonial days. In the colonial days, the biggest thing that happened to Africa is that customers were created, and we are still customers till today. because colonialists came in and created customers for certain type of clothing, certain type of shoes, certain types of gadgets, which we operated without. In a strange way, our organizations still do that till today. If you look at an organization like Apple, Apple has created, for those who are Apple enthusiasts, you probably have about 8, 9 gadgets. You have your iPhone, you have your iPod, you have your iPad, the big one, you have an iPad, the mini, you have an next, what do you have? Beyond that, of course, you have your desktop and you have your laptop. And for some reason, Apple has created of you a customer. I don't know if anybody has counted for all those 6, 7 gadgets. Bank that somewhere, or keep that somewhere at the back of your mind as we go through the rest of the session, looking at the issue of creating a customer. And the big thing you'll probably pick out is customers don't exist in many ways until you actually create them. And it's actually a customer that, if you like, almost created in your own image, and it's up to you. You're actually in charge. You're actually in charge of creating that customer. So we're looking at these two, they're not really sides of the same coin. And when you get the definition, you'll see why I say that. They are the same coin in so many ways. In fact, as I was going through this and the preparation, I realized we're talking exactly the same language. You're probably looking at the same elephant from different angles, and all of us are saying different things, but at the same time, we're saying the same things. The same animal we're busy describing in different ways, and at the center of it is the customer. So what's this thing called brand? If there's a word that is used in so many wrong ways, it's the word brand. I mean, and I think I would blame where it came from. Brand came from the act of burning a sign on a cow, literally on cattle, to show that it belonged to you. That's what branding is. So right now, for a lot of things we see, if we see a logo somewhere, you've branded something. But brand has gone far beyond that. When you look at brand, it's an entire iceberg. Huge iceberg. You may know an iceberg, what you see above the water is probably 10% of an iceberg. An iceberg is the region of 70 to 90% submerged. The part that sank the Titanic was not the part they could see. They thought it's a small iceberg, they ran into it, sank the Titanic because 90% is below. And in a funny way, what you see below there is what sinks organizations. What you see above there and what we consider brand in so many ways is not what brand is all about. It's maybe the signifier that there is a brand. When you see there, you see external communication, which in a way you could say is also advertising is part of it. You see your buildings, we see our premises. You see your name, it's not your brand. You see your logo, that's not your brand. The interior design of your space is not your brand. Collateral, which is everything that you have that's branded, whether they're pens, cups, anything else, that is not your brand. That just shows, if anything, signals that there's a brand. What is really, really your brand, what tests your brand is actually what's underneath. You can see there, I'll direct you to the bottom right of the screen. Sometimes we can imagine that how we deal with our creditors has nothing to do with our brand. The stranger, it has everything to do with your brand. If you're treated poorly by the finance department at a creditor level, whether it's a financial institution or even an organization has supplied you with something, or you've supplied them and you're dealing with payments, that becomes the brand. When you go out there, you'll tell people, those people are not good people. It doesn't matter what glossy item they're selling, what glossy service they're offering. We forget that. I won't go through each of those. We have limited time, but I'm sure you've already read all of them. You see, I direct you to the bottom, to the left of the screen, the top left, under the iceberg though, you see customer experience. Customer experience sits there, but sits there to me uncomfortably, because when I get to customer experience, you'll see that maybe we need to wonder where it sits, if it sits somewhere or if it's everywhere eventually. So that's how we look at brand. It has to do with everything about the organization, about your company, about your firm, about you, because there's also something called personal branding that works towards satisfying the customer. We underline customer here because you see how we start linking it to customer experience. So in a way, what's above the iceberg, what you can see there, the obvious things which we normally call brand, and what's below the iceberg, which we imagine this doesn't matter, let the branding people go do their job. Sometimes we also say, let the customer experience people do their job. Customer experience can't do its job if the rest are not working, because you cannot, there's no smile big enough to wipe the tears away from harassment, say from, let's say from a finance department, or from bad service, whether it's for your vehicle, whether it's service in a supermarket. Customer experience can't be that. So we need to look, when you're asked what a brand is, it's not about the logo, it's not about advertising, it's not about your billing, it's not about how you look. It's about actually everything about your company, and all this combined to satisfy the customer. Satisfy is a very big word, very wide word, because what customers look for in terms of satisfaction is extremely varied. And you'll see a bit of that when you go to talk about customer experience a bit more. So let's talk about customer experience now. And we're not talking about customer service, very intentionally. And I know with ICX, Kenya has done an excellent job of debunking the issue of what customer experience is, and saying it's not customer service. I know I've done quite a bit with the ICX Kenya now, as it's called. Before it was ICS, because it moved from that service. Because when you talk of customer service, all people saw was this. People saw someone with a phone dealing with probably problems, not necessarily helping sort out issues. That's what it. We're not talking about customer service, we're talking about customer experience. Again, a very, very, very wide term when you talk about what customer experience is. This is something called the Rata model, and it talks about customer expectations. So customer expectations are almost the other side of the coin of customer experience. If you meet customer expectations, you've created great customer experience. And we'll get to agility in a bit. And I'll go through one by one very quickly, not necessarily in order. I'll start with my bias, the tangibles. Part of the experience may not be just, you may have the best experience from a human point of view, human contact point of view, but the spaces in which we serve our customers matter. What we're talking about when you see tangible at the bottom right, the physical appearance, your facilities, the business environment, your equipment. Our website now has become part of that because all of us are now global. Those become important. That's part of customer experience. It's not just that interaction as the customer is whether buying, selling, or you're buying and selling. It's not that transactional part. The tangibles are important. How do we feel for our customers? Empathy on the bottom left. The care, the attention we give to the customers individually, that they feel you're actually part of me. You feel me. You know where I'm coming from. Another very important part of customer experience. It's beyond the transaction. How do we respond on the top left there? How is our responsiveness? I know when we're running through the chat, we talked about being fast, speedy, wepesi, being quick in terms of acting, because right now we have, and you'll see that in a bit, we have a customer who does not have time. I don't know what we did as human beings. We created a lot of tools to save time, and then we started running. I'm not sure why. If you think about it, a letter used to take, it shows my age, a letter used to take 2 weeks to get somewhere, maybe 2 weeks to come back. So you had a month in between. Now, when you've sent an email to your colleague across the desk, before it lands, they have stood and asked you whether it has arrived. Actually, whether you have responded or why you have not responded. Unfortunately, that's where we are. We wish it could be different. We wish we could use that time better, but that's what we are. We now require responsiveness in a manner that's almost too much, but it's what we are. The customer eventually is the person we serve. The customer is the reason. If you remember Peter Drucker's quote, the customer is the reason we exist. There's no other reason for us to be in any kind of business. So can we offer help quickly to serve our customers? We must, because that's where we are. That's what the customer is demanding. We have to be reliable. Can we deliver what we deliver consistently and accurately? Because that's what we become. Is there an assurance we can give in terms of, do we know our stuff? Can you go to a shop, you go to an outlet, you deal with a consultant, you're going to buy a product and people don't know what it's about. That is part of the customer experience that we're supposed to deliver. So if you look at all those, you start finding a way to define what customer experience really is, and it becomes actually the sum of all interactions a customer has with you, with your company, with your organization. All the interactions. All is very important. Why? Because they interact from various angles. There's someone who's dealing with credit only. You notice I'll talk credit a lot of times because we forget that's part of the experience. There's somebody who deals only with the cleaners, there's somebody who deals only with front office, somebody who deals only with the CEO, somebody who deals only with the salespeople. All those are part of that customer experience. So I know right now we have a lot of customer experience departments. That's a whole other discussion we can have. That department, I know I've spoken to many of the CX professionals, and they know and they appreciate that their job is they're a catalyst, because this job belongs to everybody. They just belong to an customer experience department, because when you go back and look at all this that's being done, there's so much you can't do. There's no way you're going to design the space at the same time, be able to train people to be better in terms of customer experience. There's no way you're going to be responsive, because you're not the one dealing with repairing that pump. You're not the one dealing with taking that car to whoever has hired it. Somebody else is doing it. And for that reason, all you can do is be a catalyst. All you can do is make sure this gospel is actually spread right across. So CX, to repeat the definition, it's a sum of all those interactions a customer has with your company. And of course, you're trying to create a unique experience, and you're trying to create an exceptional experience for that customer. And the previous slide tells you what they look for when they're looking for that exceptional experience. We'll get to agility soon enough, but before we get there, if you look at these two for a moment, you see only one word matters, and that goes back to the first quote, not mine, by Peter Drucker, who's considered a guru in terms of management. Eventually, the customer is at the center of all this. For many organizations, I'll get to that towards the end, the customer is not at the center. And so in talking customer experience, it becomes something that we deal with as a problem, like the customer is a burden. So remember, the customer is right at the center of all this. Brand being, just to recap, it's everything about your company that works to satisfy that customer. While CX is a sum of all the various interactions the customer has with that company. And you start seeing that, like I said at the beginning, these two, in many ways, are the same way, the same thing. The brand is there to satisfy the customer, and CX is there to make sure that the customer has a good experience. So good experience may actually mean satisfaction. Eventually, you'll end up seeing one merger of all this being more or less the same thing we're trying to do, the same elephant we're looking at from two different angles. But as we look at it from those two different angles, at the center of it is the customer. And the danger with that, we have the customer there in the middle, but at the same time, we find we don't really know that customer. Let me focus on the African customer, because that's the market we are in at the moment. And that's the market that is actually where everybody is focused, not just us Africans, but the whole world is busy focused on Africa. Let's look at the African customer, who has changed quite a bit from the days when we were created as customers for products and services we did not know, did not care about, but a care was awoken in us by the enterprises that were able to create that customer. So what's this African customer telling us now? They have changed quite a bit. They become proud in a good way. They're also aspirational. So what are they saying? You have to promise to make me appear better than I really am. You have to. I always tell people, if you walk around on Sunday afternoon, that you don't know who works for a blue chip. You do not know who was cleaning toilets yesterday. You don't know who was the mama mboga of yesterday. You don't know who was hawking bananas to you. We are all aspirational. We look the same on Sunday. Yeah? That Louis Vuitton, you bought it for 10K, somebody bought it for 500. It looks the same. They're both used by day one. So when you look at it from that point of view, this customer, this African customer is telling you, treat me like I've already arrived. I'm on the way somewhere, I've already arrived, so treat me that way. So there's a lot of pride. So that tells you quite a bit about what kind of a customer experience you need to serve this kind of customer. And it's right, we've done quite a bit right across the continent. It's universal. You get, whether you go to the most rural places, you get quite a bit of pride going around. Africans are coming into themselves, if you like. And that's a positive thing. But it's also a challenge to brands who before would say, I'll give you what I want, you take it. Take it or leave it. they will leave it. So very, very important that we remember that as we look in terms of generally describing the customers. I have two more of these. At the same time, they're a little scared. They have been burnt many times. So they're cautiously optimistic, but optimistic they are. So they want a level of reassurance. They want a level of care. They want you to make them feel that they can depend on you as a brand, and they can always depend on you. If they don't, or if you don't, the same ones who will bolt, they will go. They have starved before, they can starve again. So these are customers who are probably more demanding than a customer you'd see in the West, who's used to a certain way, certain standards. Then remember, this customer now is empowered in so many ways. Information is everywhere. They know where to get what they want. Everybody's cousin is a lawyer, so they can sue you tomorrow. So you have to promise a genuine, honest conversation. Why am I sharing? Why have I shared these 3 slides? I've shared them just so that you know what kind of customer you're dealing with and therefore what kind of experience they expect. If you like, the tide has risen. The standards are much higher than they were a few years ago. So you have a very different kind of customer when you look at how you make sure that the interactions, and I've brought back the definitions, the interactions you have actually create a good experience. It's a very different kind of customer, and see everything you have in order to satisfy them has to rise to another much, much higher level than you currently imagine. So that's just a bit of background to say. I mean, we've talked about what a brand is. You can see it right there. We've talked about what customer experience is. We've talked about what kind of customers we are dealing with at the moment. And so the standards have risen. And so our organizations have to do quite a bit to be able to move forward. And I guess that's where customer experience agility comes in, because you cannot just do what you were doing before. You have to be able to shift and change with this customer. The slide, the 3-4 slides I've shown you before about where the customer is, that will keep changing. If anything, it will be becoming, I believe it will become more and more challenging as more of us are exposed, more of us are there's much more competition, meaning they could go somewhere else. And for that, and we're becoming more global, there's much more we can get, much more variety. We have choices, meaning we must look at customer experience agility to be able to serve this customer. Otherwise, if we stay just with the customer experience as it is, soon enough, it starts wearing out. The lifespan or the life expectancy of any new idea, of even anything good, is so short. You see it in so many places. You see it, for example, in the hangouts in Nairobi, or even right across. Right now, the standards in this country have really risen. And you find, for you to stay relevant, you have to be agile. Your customer experience, and that's everything about, if you remember, has to be able to shift and change to be able to meet those expectations. This man here is actually called Mwangi. It's called Lazarus Mwangi, who can contort it to anything. We need to become like Lazarus, not the one of the Bible, but this one, who can shift and change. And I thought he's quite apt to put near the definition of customer experience agility. You have to be quickly and effectively, because you can be quick and ineffective. Your speed might create a lack of standards. So agile customer experience is about being quick and effective in terms of responding to the changes around us. The customer is changing. You can already see. I'm sure I've shown these slides to audiences in different parts of the world, and as out of Africa, they don't believe it. This is what the African is now. They don't believe the African has changed. The slides about the pride, the slides about being demanding, the slides about being control. It has changed. The African can chase you away even for giving them something free. If you're not giving me something free nicely, please go away with it. That's the attitude we have now. So we have to change based on the market condition, and the customer, in a way, you could say, is part of the market conditions, so that we can deliver an exceptional customer experience. If there's anything to remember, there in these long statements about being quick, and I am happy that came out very quickly and very early in the beginning. You have to be able to change quickly. Changing quickly means we have to do our strategies very differently, and that's the part I'm going to end with. Our strategies have to be very different. We have strategies that have to be able to be quick and malleable. And that's what I'll talk to you about at the end. as we look about what's the journey in terms of where brand and customer experience meet. I think by now you've already seen it, where they start meeting. It's becoming almost obvious where those two meet. They meet at the customer. They meet at the customer, and understanding the customer becomes our only job. It's actually our only job. Understanding the customer, what journey they have, what are their attitude becomes almost the only job we have to do. If there's anybody here in market research, I'm sorry, but this is not my quote. This came from Akio Morita, one of the founders of Sony. This quote came through when they started the Walkman. Those of you who are old enough or young enough to know what a Walkman is, the Walkman is like the grandfather or great-grandfather of the iPod, where you have a tiny music system that plays something called a cassette. What did Sony do? They went to say, they were launching, the Walkman was launched first in the US. They didn't do any market research, because market research for them, they felt, if we go ask people what they want, and this, I'll take you back a bit. If you asked people when in the days when there were horses and carriages, you ask people what they want, because they wanted to move faster or to go to new places and go further, they tell you, give me a faster horse, because we operate in a paradigm, and we only see that, most of us see that paradigm shifting faster, further. That's most of what we do. So they said, we can't do market research. Let's go and observe what's happening. And they went to the US to check, to observe, to get an intuitive sense to what people might want. So that's the era when people had walked around huge radios. I mean, it's hard to believe now we carry a radio. I mean, your radio in quotes can fit in your wallet. It's smaller, much smaller than your wallet. So people used to walk around with huge radios, go to different places to listen to music, or just walk around and listen to music with huge radios. I think what can help these people with is a Walkman, something. Let me shrink that radio so that they can actually carry it around. Because I don't think they're looking to do weightlifting with radios. And that's where we got the Walkman from. So he says, careful watch how people, that's the customer, how they live. Get an intuitive sense for what they might want. Then go on and do it. You don't have to do the research, you actually have to observe and understand. I said that's where we start from, because we need to look, observe. The slides I showed about the customer, they're not based on market research per se. They're based on having observed customers over time, consulting for various organizations to see what's the attitude that they will never take. So that's where we start. We start by understanding the customer. So how do you go about creating this nexus where there's brand and customer experience, and has to be, of course, with agility? I'll take you a bit back. And I think the answer for me, my opinion, and I say it's not gospel truth, is down to what we call customer journey mapping. You have to understand the customer and the journey they walk through from their point of view. It's important because it actually means business. You see some of the statistics there. 52% of customers switch providers due to poor customer service. And to me, customer service is not at the front office, it's right across. So I believe that number 52 is probably much more than that. Switching customers is expensive. You can see how many trillions they are there in the middle. Marketers agree. It's critical to have a cohesive customer journey, but many of us don't do it because we are busy selling. We don't put the customer in the middle. At the bottom, there are only 36% of customers have a process that's like a journey map, and you see each touch point and how does the customer walk, and how do I make sure my brand is being brought out through that. And you see the statistics there about sales leads, how many touch points are required. So customer journey mapping, in my opinion, is one of the most critical things we need to do. It's where we need to start in so many ways to understand the customer. It's an example of one. And what you see there right across, this is the model, you probably have come across it. First, you need awareness of what you're trying to sell. You need consideration. People start thinking, can I take this? They eventually buy. That's not the end. You need to give them service beyond that, because that's what will lead you to loyalty and them coming back to switch to. They'll probably go back to purchase now. They want to go back to the other parts. So it's a cycle that's not quite a cycle. It's a line that's not quite a line. It's both linear and circular, and both somewhere in between. We need to be able to, this is just a sample. They're different for different organizations. You need to be able to tell at each of these points, am I satisfying the customer? Am I building my brand? If you remember the definition. At each point of this, am I making sure that the service or what the customer feels is exceptional? And all that should go back or be guided by what your organization stands for. And I'll show you that in a bit. One thing you'll see right here across, you'll see a lot of digital, lots of digital. And I worry about that. I worry about that because we start imagining that digital is everything. That digital is everywhere. It's not, in my opinion, not completely true. It's a tool, it's useful, we need to use it. But the moment we start losing that human touch too much, we have a problem, because eventually we are still human. Eventually, it's still about relationships. During COVID, we could not wait to find a park anywhere to sit with other human beings. I think some of those behaviors are still there, where if there's any nice big space, people park their cars, people start having picnics in their cars or outside their cars. We could not wait to be in touch with human beings. We could not wait. Now, of course, we are doing a webinar, so we are offline. I'm sure at some point Springboard will get tired and say, can I meet these human beings? I want to touch and to get that feel. I want to get that feel, because nothing beats the human touch. So as we look at that, and even as you look at your journey maps, make sure it has as much human touch as possible. Right now, of course, there's almost a digital human touch. Make sure it's actually there. It's a very, very important point. If you go back to their slides about the African customer, they're looking for that touch. And without that touch, that may be the difference between you having that customer or you losing that customer. As I come towards an end, and there'll be plenty of time for questions. What's that journey looking like to what we may call customer experience agility or CX agility? Remember, all this we are doing is because of the businesses we are in. We need to, as we craft, and this is the journey of all of us, most of us go through, you might miss one or two steps because many of us don't look at customers at the center. Can our business strategy make sure it has the customer at the center? If you go through, whoever is consulting on your business strategy, keep asking them as you do this, because a business strategy is a lot of it is almost a piece of engineering. You're creating a machine. Is the customer there? If the customer is not there, think twice, because what will happen is you have an excellent machine. It shall not be able to connect with anybody. And that, in a way, is where brand comes in, to feed or to, if you like, fertilize the business strategy to make sure the brand creates that connection. Remember, the definition of brand is such that everything around that business, around the organization, actually comes to create that brand. Now, everything about then, what brand does is create what I call focus or clarity of the one thing you stand for. What is different about you that will engage customers? That has to be fed in there and has to be around. I've used the word customer again. Those two must have the customer in between, in the center, actually, to make sure that you actually connect, you actually engage, and you're actually able to have a chance of having a better business, if you like. We have to define the customer. What I'll say here is this process is not necessarily linear. Because remember, I've talked about customer in phase 1 and phase 2, and then I've brought customer in phase 3. You have to have customer right across. The customer has to be right across. Do you know who your customer is? If you don't know who your customer is, what are you selling? If you don't know who your customer is, how will your brand connect? So it starts with the customer, like the Akio Morita said, it starts with totally understanding who is this customer. Without that, it's very difficult to say you actually have a customer experience, or a customer experience journey can be mapped. To me, eventually, to have CX agility, you need to have what I may call a brand-led customer experience journey map. Why I say brand-led is because brand is what connects with that customer. So if your customer experience cannot be generic, it has to be aligned to what your brand stands for. And at the center of that, and this adds to the agility, right across, that strategy has to be able to align to various market scenarios. And I'm sure many of you start looking at your strategies again. Has it aligned to various market scenarios? Has it aligned to various customer need states? Because customers' needs change. And they change, why you say it called need states. It changes the morning to evening. It changes depending on mood. It changes depending on the company you have. It changes depending on what different experience you want. The customer at Kempinski is also the customer at Njuguna's. That's what customer need states stands for. So you can't say there is a Kempinski customer and a Junguna's customers. They are probably the same person at various needs states. Maybe Junguna's for the weekend or the evening, Kempinski's for the corporate meetings. The same person, same customer. So it's become very difficult. That's a whole other webinar to talk about. This is a customer and I've categorized him or her. That customer can change depending on circumstances. They go to the village, they become villagers. Still the same customer. So we have to be able, do we have a strategy, whether it's a business strategy, a brand strategy, a definition of the customer, a customer experience journey map that can be able to adapt, be agile, be alive to those various changes in that same customer. That's a difficult job, to be able to look at that so that you're able to adapt and make sure you don't become irrelevant overnight, which is a very, very easy thing to do in this day and age. As I come towards an end, eventually this is about business. Those of you in non-profit, it's still about business. It's still about money in different ways. You get your money from donors. Your accounting or your credibility or how you're measured is different, but still it's about how do I make sure I attract the donor money. If it's a business, how do I make sure I attract that money from a customer? So we both have customers, profit, non-profit. Even government has customers. Government has to make sure we, for example, pay our taxes. How do they do that? There has to be a way around it beyond using a club to make sure that we do pay. We also have to have an allegiance to make sure that we actually are engaging well with the government. So all of us, government, non-government, that's private sector, that's the NGO sector, private sector, all of us eventually have to connect to the customer. That's the brand. All of us have to eventually give an exceptional experience. That's, if you like, that's the agile customer experience. Eventually, the customer is in the middle, as I've said many times. And the word customer is here again many times. So what do we need to do as I come towards an end? We have to make sure we build our brand, build our business aligned to what the customer aspires. And our customer right now is very aspirational. Make sure the customer is in the middle. We have to build a kind of customer experience. You have to customize it because it can't be the same as everybody else. So that you can be different, so that you can win, and beat your competition. Build your customer experience for agility. Means, understand that customer, know how agile they are, how different they are, how they change. And that's what makes the difference in growing your bottom line. As I conclude, it's up to us eventually. If we can structure, and I've shared with you a potential journey of how you look at it, it's not linear, it's not even circular. It's intuitive, it cuts right across. By following those bits and pieces, I believe you'll be able to not just have a future that happens to you, but like Peter Drucker, I'll end by where I started with the same person's quote. The best way to predict the future is actually to create it. And having gone through what you've gone through the last few minutes, and I'm sure much other information you get from other Springboard webinars and what else you interact with, we actually have the tools to be able to create the future by being very intentional about it. Thank you very much.
Wow. Presented specifically, clearly. And so, we can be able to pick these ones and actually run. Action number 1, let's take this one and run with it. Action number 2, let's pick one. The Rata scale, we can audit ourselves around it. Thank you so much, Sitati. I am picking some very, very nice things about this presentation today. We have it, the nexus of brand and customer experience. And I have loved it that you have actually told us at the end of the day is growing the bottom line for the institution, because in most customer experience conversations, we are trying to ensure that we are showing how does this add value to the institution. And of course, value includes also the revenue generation and increased revenue. So thank you very much for that. We are going to take in some questions, but I must say that what you see below is what sinks the organization. That one has hit a chord, because even for us as individual brands, it is what is inside us that sinks us. And so we must be able to take care of that to ensure that we remain strong. even as individual brands? Thank you so much. I am seeing some questions. There was Ruth who was asking, where multiple companies make similar brand promises, for example, exceptional customer service, how is it that a brand can truly stand out and differentiate itself through customer experience? So all the brands are saying this, this, and this. How then does one particular brand stand out? So there's another one from Richard, that when crisis occurs, how can a brand maintain its reputation and customer trust while adapting its CX to address the situation effectively? So what they're saying is that a crisis has struck and now reputation is at stake. How then does the brand ensure that we maintain customer trust while adapting to changes? And of course, there's a lot of thank you, very insightful talk and great job right there. We can pick those two.
Yes, we can pick those two. The answers are short. Brands making similar promises in the market. Eventually, the proof is in the pudding. You own a space by proving that you own it. It's not by saying that you own it. Another definition of brand is a promise made and a promise kept. The one, you can make any promise you want. Those who keep the promise end up owning that space. Those who don't keep will not own that space. So you'll be displaced by, when we consult for brands, we tell them, we can say what we want, but if we do not run with it, somebody else can run with it. And for that reason, you have to consistently deliver, which is answering the second question. When you're in crisis, if you've been consistently delivering, people will ask, surely we can't, you've been delivering all this time. There's a crisis. It means there's something has gone wrong, but it doesn't change your nature if you've been consistently delivering. It's easier to understand it from a human being point of view or human perspective. You have this person who has been very honest, very forthright all this time. And then an incident occurs where they are accused of, say, stealing. What happens to those who know that person? They say, no, he can't, she can't. So can you build your brand, be able to deliver consistently? The proof is in the pudding beyond what you say, to a point where there's a crisis, you're able to withstand it. So sorting that crisis starts before the crisis by making sure people know you for something you're delivering consistently. So when the crisis hits, you continue delivering consistently and the crisis passes. Right now, we are so busy, we have no time to dwell on one crisis. So as long as you're consistent delivering, the crisis will pass. So, and I know for those of you who maybe PR more and more, you find that the response is actually often no response. You don't stoke the fire, there'll be a new scandal tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I hope that sort of answers the question, but a lot of this starts with making your promise, keeping your promise in terms of your brand, in terms of your experience, to a point where people know if anything goes wrong, there must be something off here. Let's go check. In fact, let's go ask them. They are our people. They can't have done this. Okay.
Fantastic. So you're saying that we must be consistently speaking about something, doing something for it to become a crisis. Otherwise, if it is crisis after crisis, then our brand is becoming that bad thing.
Brand.
Wow. Very powerful. I've got two more for you. Gertrude is asking, innovating an effective customer experience can sometimes create tension with maintaining brand consistency. How can a business strike the right balance between these two objectives and deliver a unique and memorable CX? So that's striking a balance. And then Audrey is saying, how can personal branding be pursued to promote corporate branding? I guess there is another nexus of personal branding and corporate branding.
Okay. Let me start with personal branding versus corporate branding. They're actually not in conflict, because ideally, and we do this when you do what we call employee brand engagement or brand internalization. Brand internalization is about making sure personal brands are aligned to the corporate brand. In that way, there's no conflict. The truth is, if we're to be strict, if there's a conflict between your personal brand and the corporate brand, you should not be in that corporate. And if organizations were very strict about ensuring, and some are, ensuring that they hire the right kind of people, a personal branding test becomes a key thing to make sure you actually bring in the right brands that will build your bigger brand. So personal brands may be an accumulation in a way of what the corporate brand becomes, because if all the personal brands are, and this is an extreme situation, are in conflict with the corporate brand, you shall all be doing a very good job of syncing that particular brand. So they're not really, in my opinion, they're not really in conflict. When it comes to CX and building brand, again, they're not in conflict. Your customer experience will build your brand. It's part of what will build your brand. Meaning you need to make sure those two are talking so that what your brand stands for can be delivered through the customer experience. What the customer remembers in the end about you should be aligned to what your brand is. If I must put one on top of the other, I would put a brand above the customer experience from a strategic point of view. The brand will direct the customer experience. That's why in my slides I said brand-led customer experience, because the customer experience can't be generic. You have to ask, what does my brand stand for? Therefore, what kind of experience should I give? If you're a brand that's very sporty, for example, the experience has to bring that out in various ways, which will be different, both positive, from a brand that says we're very corporate. It's not bad. There are people for that. We're very corporate, we're very serious, we are formal. That formality has right, that the customer experience has to run through that formality that you have promised in your brand. So the two, to answer your question a little more precise, those two must talk because there's no way they should conflict. They don't need to balance anything. They shouldn't conflict. They should serve each other. The customer experience will feed the brand will feed the customer experience, but more often than not, you've defined your brand before you defined your customer experience. But having talked to each other, of course. Okay, hope I've answered those two.
Yes, you have. I'm actually just internalizing the way you're saying that it is brand-led customer experience, because we've often had customers, when they're complaining, they would say, that is really unlike you. So it means that there's a way you've created your brand. And so when a mistake has happened, it is definitely not you. Then there are others you hear even on social media, those ones are like that. So for sure, you're just affirming that it has to be brand-led customer experience. There's a lot of thank you very much coming through. And the personal branding one also. Tom, you can be able to share with us your contact so that for people who want to come back to school for tuition and get some clarity, they can be able to reach out to you.
I guess you'll find me on LinkedIn. That's easy. Find me on Twitter. That's easy. Oh, it's not called Twitter anymore. It's called X. Huh? Okay, I'm happy to engage on those two. Beyond that.
Right, there we have. That is Tom Sitati and at Tom_Sitati. So we're going to be reaching out there. And somebody is saying that it was such a good coincidence that they read about you at a corporate executive. And then today they hear from you, the man himself. Tom.
Thank you.
We are so glad we're having you here. And thank you so much. All right, there you have it. You have Tom's contact. Today, we have actually managed to get in very, very, very good time. There's somebody here pressing me and saying, please, Anastasia, ask this. All right. Someone is asking about balancing personalized customer experience with data privacy concerns, because it can be challenging. And how can a business strike the right balance to deliver tailored customer experience without crossing privacy boundaries? I know this whole week it has been all about privacy specifically. So I don't know, now we need to have another angle about how then do we give you this personalized customer experience as a brand and not breach privacy.
Can I take that? Although lawyers will take it better.
Let's try it.
A huge part of it is legalities. But I think the other side of it is, and I think the legal don't operate in a vacuum. As we are collecting data from customers, I think the principle of it is that they should know it's being collected. There should be a clear awareness that such and such data has been collected. For example, the online world is notorious for how it snoops on us. And it's even worse. So online is very difficult because you don't know who to report to. But when it's a shop, for example, it's you feel invaded when they have certain information and you didn't know they had it. Or they didn't, and maybe you gave it to them. It's very important that you know what communication, it's about, I've passed a message and I've gotten feedback. The feedback part may not quite work, it needs to work. The customer needs to know what information you have of theirs there. As you collect, of course, legally, and we've had quite a bit about data privacy and protection in the last couple of weeks. But as you collect it, it's also clear what you use it for. And you have to ask explicitly for permission. Otherwise, it almost becomes creepy that, my unga is finished. And you have told me now you need to add more unga in your house. We're not used to it. Maybe it depends on different generations, I guess. So I think for me, the short answer is about being open with that customer, being open about what you've collected, feed it back to them, and being very clear about how you may use it. And of course, while of course being on the right side of the law. That's how I see it. Otherwise, you can become, it can become quite disturbing. Huh? Yeah, this is my personal perspective on that, at least from my own personal experience, maybe I think in my own way. If I go to a place and people, I am too familiar that everybody has my database of this is what you have, this is what you'll have, I will go to somewhere else. And I don't think I'm the only one who feels that you should not know me that much. And I think that's, in a way, that's the question being asked. But if I have an answer, please, you may rephrase it. But if the short of it is, it's about being open. Yes. Being very, very open.
So be open, let the person know you're collecting the data, from where you've collected it, and for what use you will use it for, and things like that. Thank you very much, Tom. You might think that we really have a lot of data on you, because I'm being told that your sketches, somebody wants to hear about your sketches, somebody else is saying there's a I promise you we are compliant, we are just seeing it now. So you want to tell us a little bit more into that?
I guess sketches are a tool. They're a tool for architectural work. It's a way of communicating. It's also a way of jotting down ideas. It's also, in a way, it's also art. Art in terms of I think the biggest thing I experience about sketching is it allows you to observe properly. Yeah? There's nothing like you paying attention to something you're sketching, because I sketch a lot from what I can see. Paying enough attention to something to actually understand it fully is actually, it's also therapeutic in a way. Okay. So it's not necessarily about being an artist. A lot of the time when people ask me, it's like, just be able to look at that tree, look at that car, look at that street, look at that building, and be able to just, fully understand it is very different from, say, taking a photo. And it also allows us, for a few moments we have nowadays, to run away from these gadgets that are starting to rule us.
We shall be coming back another day to talk about it.
I'm available on those two platforms at least.
Asante, but we pick that very much, because about the sketch and the concentration is the same way we should to our brands. Take so much concentration to understand and so know what to present to our customers. So thank you very much, Mr. Sitati. We are actually flagging off our customer service week coming through next week, and what a lovely way to start off, because when we talk agility, and now we are ready to celebrate our customers in the coming week. And so we will be able to be flagging this off today. And it's really a pleasure to have had you with us today. Asante sana. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us this lunch hour. As always, we are so grateful to have you. I'll tell you about Springboard Capital. We are a microfinance company that has transformed lives beyond offering the normal financial services. We don't just give you money, we partner with you. We are agile enough to build a relationship that goes beyond traditional financing. And so our results are more of partnership. Our customers have reported business growth over the years, and it is true. And so when Tom was talking about the iceberg, check our iceberg, I guarantee you. So you can go to our YouTube channels and find our customer testimonials about our financial education webinars. So you'll be able to find our financial experts there speaking. We thank you so much for sparing your lunch to spend it with us. and please enjoy your afternoon. Happy customer service week. Bye for now, Springboard Capital. We are the lending hand. Kwaheri.